I am Sandy Hewlett, and I'm going to introduce you to Greater Philadelphia Records, which is a lot of material, so we're going to whiz through, but I wanted to give you a general introduction into what is available in this area. Are you all from Pennsylvania, by the way? No. Okay, very good. This is your first time here and to get introduced to some of these repositories, all right? Well, the Greater Philadelphia area is greater. You can see the Philadelphia area bordered by several counties. Bucks an original county. Montgomery was not formed until 1784. Chester County is an original county. Delaware was cut off from it in 1789. And of course you'll see that Delaware and Chester border Maryland and Delaware. And a short cruise across that river is New Jersey. And any ancestor from any of those areas could show up in any of the other areas. That I can assure you. So don't ever try to limit your research in this area. That's rule number one. Feel free to cast your net widely. Now, Philadelphia itself, the area we know as Philadelphia, came about in 1854. Prior to that, all of these little areas were individual townships. We have Blockley, Germantown Township was up there. Actually, that was Blockley. We had Lower Dublin up in the north and King Sessing down in the south. So you might have to look at the township level at some point in your Philadelphia research as well. The basic repositories in Philadelphia that we'll start with are City Hall, where they have the wills and the marriage licenses, the City Archives, where all of the old court records are and the vital records are held. The Free Library of Philadelphia is a fabulous repository, and it's open 7 days a week. The National Archives MidAtlantic branch, and I was corrected this morning, it's actually National Archives Philadelphia, and we'll be moving to the northeast, but currently it's downtown on Chestnut Street. The Presbyterian Historical Society is downtown Philadelphia and a very valuable resource for Presbyterian records, not just in Philadelphia or Pennsylvania. They have holdings from many states, particularly those Presbyterian churches who have closed, have sent their records to the Presbyterian Historical Society. The Archdiocesan Archives is not in Philadelphia, it is just across the line in Montgomery County, but they hold all of the Roman Catholic records for the Greater Philadelphia area. And the Jenkins Law Library, which may be a new thought, a new repository, but I'm going to introduce you to the value of a law library and why it would be worth a trip to the Jenkins, which is also on Chestnut Street. But City Hall is the closest. Many of you may have passed it on your way here, so we'll start with a quick visit to City Hall. They have the marriage licenses in the Orphans Court, beginning in 1885. Prior to 1885, if you're looking for a marriage, you're going to have to try to localize your ancestor, where they live, and look for the church. But beginning in 1885, marriage licenses were required, and they will contain a lot of good information. Besides the name of the bride and groom, you'll get the parents' names. Depending on the time period, you might get the birth dates of the bride and groom and the place of birth of the bride and groom, and occupations. So if you're looking for something after 1885, it's a valuable resource. The indexes are on familysearch.org. www.familysearch.org, which is on your handout. The Register of Wills is also in City Hall. The will books, you will find microfilm here. They have them. But if you're looking for an original probate file, which would contain the will and any other related documents that the deceased might have left or their survivors might have left, it will be in that original probate file. You would go to City Hall and look in the indexes, get the will number, and then you order the will. Unfortunately, you have to come back the next day because the wills are kept off-site. But they will bring it up for you, and an original probate record is definitely worth looking at, not just the will books on microfilm. Also in City Hall at the Presbyterian's office, if you're looking for a divorce, the indexes are available. Not necessarily the divorce records themselves, depending on the year. Don't carve this in stone and don't say Sandy told you. But sometimes on the really older divorces, you can get to look at them. But the indexes are available on microfilm in the Presbyterian's office.
Does that include New Jersey then or not?
No, this is strictly Philadelphia City Hall, right? This doesn't include any other county but Philadelphia. The City Archives is over by 30th Street Station on Market Street, 3101 Market. They have the birth and death registers there. They're on microfilm. Sometimes they're hard to read, but if you demonstrate to the staff there that you're having trouble reading them, they'll bring the originals out. But from 1860 to 1915, Philadelphia kept birth and death registers, and they are available. The cemetery returns begin in 1803. When somebody died, every week or every 2 weeks, the cemetery would send an inventory of those deaths to the city, and they have been kept. Now, both of these records, the birth and death registers and the cemetery returns, have been indexed and are available on Family Search. That's the www.familysearch.org site. And if you register and create an account with Family Search, for the deaths, you can actually look at the original death certificate because they have been scanned. And they're available on that website. The deeds are on microfilm at the city archives. Now, if somebody lives in a city, you don't always think that they owned property. But in the 1700s and 1800s, a lot of them did. And your research really should include a look for the deed indexes, which are online. Indexes are online. The city put the indexes online. They actually scanned all of the deed index books. And that's a free site, and you have the website on your handout. So it's worth a peek to see if there are any names in those deed indexes. Almshouse records are also kept at the city archives for various time periods if you're looking for somebody that might have fallen on hard times. And all of the court records are at the city archives for various time periods. The common pleas court probably being the most common, but if you had any indication of a court case, then the city archives is where you would look for them. And the tax records, they go back to very, very early years, many of them by the townships. Remember I mentioned that before 1854, what we now consider Philadelphia was filled with different townships. If you can localize where your ancestor lived, be it Blockley Township, Germantown, whatever, then you would seek the tax records for that township. And naturalizations for the Philadelphia courts. Now, we know that online at the Ancestry website, they have many other federal naturalizations. The Philadelphia courts, of which there were many, also naturalized people, including the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. And there is an index to all of these naturalizations that was donated to the Genealogical Society of Pennsylvania. And again, I've given you their website, www.genpa.org. In addition to the published indexes in Philby's book on naturalization. I don't know if anybody's seen that, but this index online contains 25,000 additional names that were never published in Philby's books on Pennsylvania naturalizations, because one of our archivists, Jefferson Moak, actually indexed those 25,000 quarter session court records.
Could you repeat the URL, the address? Oh, time?
Yeah, it's the www.genpa.org. That's where all of the naturalization indexes are.
How many places in Pennsylvania can somebody get naturalization?
Prior to 1906, you could be naturalized in any court of record. So you could get naturalized in New York or file a letter of intent in New York City and get naturalized in Chicago. There were no rules, other than usually you filed your letter of intent shortly after you arrived, and then within 5 years you were allowed to file for naturalization if you had a good record, if you didn't get thrown in jail.
In any town?
Any town, any court, yes. So you have to, again, cast a wide net when you're looking for naturalization records if you don't find them where you think you should find them. And I threw this in quickly. This is one of those physician returns, where this is also what those cemetery returns look like. This one's dated 1806. And all these precious little pieces of paper were saved by the city, and this is included in those death records on Family Search. A nice little clue, because it said she's 63 years old, so you know she was born in 1743, 48. Do the math quick. And you could also look for this Samuel P. Griffith to see if he indeed was the physician, and if you found out where he lived, you would know where this Rachel Brewer lived when she died. So that would be a good way to start doing some additional research on a name you found in this index. The Free Library of Philadelphia opens 7 days a week. It's an excellent repository for this area, but not just for Philadelphia area research. They have maps globally. They have a fabulous map department. Newspapers. Beginning in 1713, they have all of the Philadelphia newspapers. They have a marvelous finding aid online. It's 72 pages of newspapers. They also have telephone books for Philadelphia beginning in 1897. Now, city directories we know are available for the major cities. But if somebody you're looking for was overlooked in the city directory after 1897, you also have the telephone books to fall back on to see if they're listed. The library has a magnificent rare book department, not necessarily for genealogies, but maybe an early history of an area you're researching, be it a county or a township. So don't overlook their rare book department. And if you have the Pennsylvania German ancestry, they have a Proctor collection. I don't know if everybody knows what Proctor is, but it's the elegantly decorated birth and marriage records that the Pennsylvania Germans created. They also have online at their website samples of this Proctor, but they have over 1,000 pieces of Proctor. So if you're looking for Pennsylvania German ancestry, I would highly recommend you check that out. And the social science room on the second floor has all of the history books and a lot of the genealogies they have, plus some knowledgeable librarians. The maps are in there too. If you wanted to, say, a New Jersey map even, I would pay a visit to the Free Library. The National Archives, MidAtlantic, and I stand corrected, National Archives, Philadelphia. We just learned this week that they are going to be closing this facility on Chestnut Street. They have one up in the northeast on Townsend Road. It's just off the Pennsylvania Turnpike. So approximately through the end of July, Philadelphia will be open, and it will close, and all of the National Archives records, most of which are already up there at the Townsend Lane facility, will be the only National Archives for this area. We know the National Archives for all of the records. They have the military, the census, the naturalization, and the passenger list. But there are other records that you would consider searching at the National Archives. After 1789, we began our federal period. I'm sorry, this is crackling. We began our federal period. Agencies such as the Coast Guard, all their records would be at the federal level, and for the Mid-Atlantic states, which is West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia, they will be at the National Archives, either in Philadelphia or soon to be up in the northeast part of the city. The federal court records will also be there. If your ancestor had a business, the bankruptcy court records are at the National Archives. The Court of Appeals and the civil court records, federal court records, are also at our National Archives. The U.S. Customs Service you might be interested in. I had a case where you will find passenger lists, but in checking the customs record, I found all of the bills of lading, what was on that ship, and the fact that a passenger died on the ship before it arrived in port. So the customs records are another addition to our passenger list that you may want to consider looking at. The National Archives also has the fabulous finding aid online. You have the website, and if you're looking for inspiration sometimes looking at these online finding aids can give you just that inspiration, because you'll see a record group and you'll think, yes, I want to look at that. They also have the 1798 glass tax for all of Pennsylvania. This was a tax instituted after the Revolutionary War by our government to help pay the debts incurred during the Revolution. And Pennsylvania is one of the few states where the records for the entire state survived by county. So it's a record of the property and how much tax an ancestor would have paid. And we have it for all of the counties that were in existence in 1798. The Jenkins Law Library, I'll just briefly introduce you to it. I'm very high on law libraries because, number one, it's open to the public. They used to charge $5 a day, which their website doesn't indicate they do anymore, but they're very, very helpful there. And there's a fabulous collection of records by state, starting with Pennsylvania, of all of our early legislative and state assembly. These were all published, not just for Pennsylvania, but for all of the states in the early years. And the Jenkins Law Library has a collection of at least all of the records in this area, including New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland. The state legislatures and assemblies often dealt with our ancestors. If our ancestors had no recourse with the local courts or had a problem, they would often write, as we do now, to our state legislature, and they would act on the problem. Things like pensions. Name changes would be published in these books. Legitimizations. If a child was born and the parents weren't married yet, in order for that child to inherit from the father, the child had to be legitimized. So the parents would go to the state legislature and get that done. And you will find that published. All of these books are also indexed. So if you took the time to go through some of these books and look at the index, you might find something you didn't know. Also, if you have any indication that an ancestor may or may not have had a court case at some point, the Jenkins Law Library gives you access to the LexisNexis and Westlaw databases. Basically, they're the same. They're databases of all of the court records going back for years. The results come in differently, but basically LexisNexis and Westlaw cover all of the court indexes, and you're going back to the 1800s. And if you go to the Jenkins Law Library, they'll show you how to use that database, and you can search on names or places and see what comes up, particularly if you're looking for a court case. This is a nationwide database. The Presbyterian Historical Society is down at 4th and Lombard, a very nice facility. And they hold the Presbyterian church records for not just Philadelphia or Pennsylvania, but for many areas up and down the East Coast. I recently looked at some Pittsburgh Presbyterian church records there. If a church closes or finds they no longer can hold on to their old records, they will most likely have sent them to the Presbyterian Historical Society here in Philadelphia. They have an online catalog, so you don't have to go there to see if they have the church records that you need. It's called Calvin. You can access it from their website. You can put in the town or state of interest. Even just putting in a state, you might see all of the Presbyterian records that they hold in that state. So you could start to see what churches were nearby where your ancestor lived. Also on their website is Hall's Index. They're working on that, and I think it's up to 32 states have been completely indexed for all of the Presbyterian churches known to exist in those 32 states, plus the District of Columbia. So you can get an idea if there was even a Presbyterian church anywhere near where your ancestors lived. Remember, even if they weren't Presbyterian, sometimes your ancestors went to the church that was closest, because they wanted to have a minister, and sometimes if there was only a Presbyterian minister around, they might have gone to that church that week to get a child baptized. The Archdiocesan Archives is in Wynwood, just across the line from Philadelphia into Montgomery County. They hold all of the Roman Catholic church records for this area, not just Philadelphia, but greater Philadelphia.
Do you mean it's at St. Charles? Is it at St. Charles?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, this is not a place you can visit to look at the church records. They have a library there, church histories, things like that you're welcome to use. But you can only ask the staff to look at the church records, unfortunately. Now, they do make it easy. They do have a research form online. If you know what church and a time period you would like searched, you can download the form, you send it in with a fee. And they're pretty good at responding within a couple of weeks. I've been quite impressed with the work they do. But you have to have an idea of the time period. Of course, you know your ancestor's name, and if you can vocalize them where they lived, they can then pinpoint which church records they should be looking at.
Can you actually go there though, or not?
Yeah, you can go there, but you can't look at the church records. You can go there to look at church histories. You can work in their library,
Is
yes.
that open regularly, or
Yes.
it's just a...
Yeah, I think you can go there Monday through Friday, but the exact hours will be on their website. And it's the Sacramento registers prior to 1720 that they will search, 1720, 1920, that they will search for you.
Pardon?
Say again. Can you say that last one again, please?
The records.
Page-
Sacramento
The
records.
Sacramento
Right here,
register.
page 2.
Yeah. Church records for the five-county area. They also have records of 3 Philadelphia boys' orphanages that they would search for you as well if you thought that an ancestor was orphaned. And as I said, the research form is online. And I'll just briefly mention Villanova University because they are collaborating with the Archdiocesan archives and creating a digital library from the books and the church histories and the journals and the newspapers held by the Archdiocesan archives. They're digitizing them. A few things are on the website now that the Falvey Library has mounted and is continuing. So I bring this collaboration to your attention. And the Catholic newspapers that the Archdiocesan archives holds are being digitized also in Villanova. So in a couple more years, this will be a fabulous online resource. And the books and journals as well. And if you're going to go to Villanova or you're out in that area, I will mention just briefly their law library too. I've already introduced you to them. They have an even older collection of the legislative records for all of the states. They have them for England and they have them for Canada. Their rare book collection, which is open to the public in their law library, is worth a trip if you're looking for some unique records. The Friends Historical Library is where the Quaker records are held, not just for this area. Now there's 2 repositories in the area. Swarthmore is the biggest. They have the largest collection of the Quaker records. And Haverford College has some. And even if they don't have the originals, they have a lot of the microfilm. So you do have a choice of repositories. And an online catalog of their holdings. Now this is a huge collection, but it is all available. This is the website that they offer. Basically 4 yearly meetings, which are all the major early meetings. Baltimore, the New York, the Philadelphia, and I've even used some North Carolina Quaker meeting records at Swarthmore. And this is an example from their online catalog. I selected the MidAtlantic monthly meeting out of the Baltimore yearly meeting. Now, all of the Philadelphia yearly meeting records are cataloged and online, just as you see here. But you can see it offers the dates, the records are available, and it tells you whether it's at Swarthmore or Haverford. In this case, these records are available at both. The originals are probably at Swarthmore, but only microfilm at Haverford. I selected this men's minutes just to again show you the more detail that's available on the website. And you can search by locality to find if there's a Quaker meeting nearby. And this tells you, if it's Swarthmore SW, it would say HV if it was at Haverford, and that's the microfilm number, but more importantly, you know that the records are there for a time period you're looking for and for a meeting that you're looking for. Should have shot that arrow in first. The Delaware County Archives is relatively new as archives goes. I think it was 2006 it was opened. The first archive since the county was formed in 1789 was not created until 2006. So those records had sat in warehouses all those years. But the archivist actually was retired from the National Archives here in Philadelphia and devoted himself to getting the Delaware County Archives and all their old records in order, and he recruited a bunch of volunteers, and they've been indexing like crazy. So there's indexes to all of these records on the website, the wills and administrations, again, only the indexes. The wills and administrations and the orphans court. Now, the wills you can't access at the archives. It's indexed, but if you find a name you want, you have to go to the courthouse in media and order the will, and then view it at media, but at least you know that the index is online, and for the administrations as well. The orphans court records you can look at the archives. Orphans court. Does everybody know what the orphans court is in Pennsylvania? Okay, I will explain that. It's not necessarily dealing with orphans. The orphans court is the court of record for probate. Now, it might have to do with a child who is orphaned, and that usually meant just that their father died. If their mother was living, they were considered an orphan. But it also dealt with land records if something was not precisely willed, or if there was a question about any possessions. It was thrown into orphans court, and the judges then would decide the distribution of the estate. So don't overlook orphans court records just because you think it had to do with an orphan child. That's not always the case. So it's always good to look at an orphans court index. They have the court record files from 1789, and you'll see on the website how many of the records the volunteers have indexed. There's a fabulous collection there. The insolvent debtors. The marriages in Pennsylvania, all of the counties pretty well have marriages from 1852 to 1854. They passed a law in 1852 to record vital records, but by 1854 the compliance was low and they rescinded the law. But almost every county will at least have those 3 years covered for you. And then they started up again in 1885. So again, you will have vital records by Pennsylvania county. This is all 67 counties this would apply to for those time periods. And likewise for the deaths. Now I mentioned the Delaware County Courthouse because you have to go there. If you find a will on the index, a will or administration, you go there and order it. But also the deeds are at the courthouse. They have the books are on the shelves, so you could look for any names. And again, if it's the early deeds, they will have to call up the deeds from storage, and you'll have to come back another day to actually look at the deed books. We're going to move on to Chester County now, which is a fabulous archive in Westchester. One of their strong points are their map and atlas collection. And I pulled this one up just to kind of show you one of the maps they have online. If you were looking to determine the townships in Chester County. And I circled that one area. This is a 1780 Chester County map. The area circled is what basically became Delaware County in 1789. They just chopped that right off. So if somebody was living in, say, Edgemont, township in 1800 and was selling land in Delaware County, they may have bought that same land prior to 1789, so you would look for the purchase in Chester County record. They also have the poorhouse records and the poor school children records, and a magnificent index to all of their records are online. Chester County, I think, leads the way in Pennsylvania counties. The naturalizations are also indexed and online at their website. The wills, administrations, and orphans court going back to 1714. Anything earlier is, if it exists, most likely was indexed in Philadelphia. And the tax lists are all online at their website. I chose this septennial tax list every 7 years. This list was created to determine mostly to determine the property owners in Pennsylvania. And they consolidated all of the lists for all of those years in one master file on their website. With the year they paid the tax, but what is unique about these is that you get the occupation. Only some years, you see in 1814, he was, but not every year had the occupation, but nonetheless that's unique to these records and helps you zero in on your ancestor if you knew that he was a blacksmith, if you found a Preston Radcliffe who was a farmer, maybe not, but if you're tracking just one occupation, that's always I should have sent that arrow in earlier. And the Chester County Historical Society, also in Westchester. This is where you go again, where volunteers over the years have indexed the church records in the county, the cemetery inventories, the newspaper clipping file. They clipped out of newspapers that were published over many, many years, births, marriages, deaths, weddings, all kinds of notices, and that clipping file is filed by family name. And the manuscripts, the genealogies that were created by people just like us over the last 100 years and were deposited at the Chester County Historical Society, definitely worth a look. And their family papers, even original documents, were donated. Likewise, with the Historical Society of Montgomery County, they have the newspapers there. The Historical Society is in Norristown. They have the deeds there. The historic land records are online. Tax records, naturalization, and again, they have an index to that 1798 glass tax that I told you about, where the National Archives has a collection for the entire state. But Montgomery County created their own index. I will also quickly say that 1798 glass tax is also indexed and available on Ancestry.com for Pennsylvania. Bucks County, just to our north, just highlight actually just two things there. The Historical Society is the repository for the county archives, and most important there is a court record index for all of their court records. They have a slip index. This goes back to the early 1700s, so if you're looking for Bucks County people, don't overlook that index, although not every court record has survived. But even often just finding a name and a location where an ancestor lived can be helpful to you even if you can't dig up the entire court record. The New Jersey State Archives, just across the river, has a fabulous website, and it's a fabulous location. Their online catalog is worth a visit. They hold the records for all 21 counties in some form or another, mostly the probate, the deeds, and in the case of Burlington County, all of the court records, absolutely all of them. They're in New Jersey vital records. They were ahead of most of the states other than New England. Their vital records begin in 1848. And they suggest that perhaps those indexes hold 60% of all the births, marriages, and deaths that were created in New Jersey at that time period, but it's still worth a look. And I will kind of wrap this up a little bit with, don't overlook what we have here, because we have microfilm of many of these records that I've just told you about. Deeds and probate for just about all 67 of our Pennsylvania counties are here, and if you want to see what they have, the online catalog here at HSP is called Discover. You'll get it from the website, and feed in the county or the township that you're looking for, and see what comes up, even the family name. Now, the next lecture, I don't want to steal Lee Arnold's thunder. He's going to give you all the details of what's here, but I didn't want to end the day without mentioning the fabulous holdings here, including the Genealogical Society of Pennsylvania collection. And I thank you.